Do It All Dad Does Jokes. Chapter 1, Disorder in the Dollhouse. If my son played with dolls, I think I'm going to get the Kelly LeBrock one using weird science on eBay for my own personal stash. If my son played with dolls, I think it's a good thing I'm not a black comedian trying to downplay my ties to the hip-hop gay mafia. If my son played with dolls, I tell him to wrap seaweed around Peckerwood before making his move on Polynesian Barbie. If my son played with dolls, we'd skip watching Porky's. It was an overrated comedy anyway. Instead, I'd push 9 to 5 in front of our viewing list. He could do worse than becoming a Dolly Parton impersonator. Whitney Houston, not so much. If my son played with dolls, I think great. He'll save me a fortune on sports camp. Plus, I'll have extra time to write more best-selling books because school plays are an annual production. If my son played with dolls, I think great. Now, when my dad asks, "What's Arthur gonna eat at the Greek diner with his friends after the ball game?" I'll say, "A turkey melt," assuming he's got some extra wiggle room to slip into his leotards. If my son played with dolls, I'd have him own it and dress up as the Flaming Human Torch for Halloween. On second thought, Mr. Fantastic also has a fabulous connotation to his name, though his hot wife, Susan Storm, is no Liza Minnelli. If my son played with dolls, I think touchdown. Now I don't have to talk shop at Pop Warner with other football dads from New England. I still think Eli is a bigger pimp than Brady, and Gisele's like 80 in model years. If my son played with dolls, I think banging my G.I. Joe figures together was much gayer, especially when I had gung-ho, manhandle, and bitch slap Cobra Commander like he was his gimpy bitch in Pulp Fiction. If my son played with dolls, I think what a relief. For a moment, I thought he'd be destined for malign misery and turn into just another ordinary slut in a straitjacket dad like me. If my son played with dolls, I'd think, big deal. Playing with the sex doll after he blooms under his Fruit of the Looms is way more deprived pathetic. Let's not make my son into a Japanese anime enthusiast just yet. If my son played with dolls, I'd move my family to my wife's native homeland of Australia. We'd start getting my son to compete in Ironman competitions sooner rather than later so he could become the Aussie superior to Bruce Jenner. If my son played with dolls, I'd join him for some double team action when he was playing around with his sister's WWE divas, Ronda Rousey. I could live without. Later in life, I don't see my son choking one out on her behalf. Chapter 2, Dragging Out Drag Queen Story Hour. Drag Queen. Do you kids have any questions about me? Daughter, do you have a different way to express your feminine side without wearing such heavy makeup? Do you think Bette Midler should have her account suspended on Twitter for wishing President Trump would be murdered, buried in an undisclosed location along Rockaway Beach somewhere? If drag queens are obsessed with expressing their own special brand of individuality, then why do they dedicate their lives to dressing up like Donna Summer? Because they enjoyed a couple of her hits on the radio. If a drag queen wrote a kid's story, would she be inclined to call it nocturnal beauty only because library lights aren't as forgiving during broad daylight? Did Michelle Obama strong-arm libraries into drag queen reading hour because her gay friends were such big fans of Joan Rivers on Fashion Police? Why is my younger brother better at putting on nail polish than I am? Does this mean he identifies more with being a Cambodian manicurist in a past lifetime than I do? Don't you think drag queen reading hour is more age appropriate for reading stories like By Curious George? And you can read those stories to sexually confuse hipster spawn in junior high, reared on Lou Reed Records. Why don't drag queens ever dress up like any of the hair metal gods my dad worships, like Tom Kiefer from Cinderella? Does the raspy howl of their lead singer Tom Kiefer clash with the old school Dolly Parton type? Drag queen replies, "Somebody save me." Chapter 3, Joan Lives. I hate Transgender Father's Day. Please for recognition. Either you're an involved dad or you're not, nipple tits. Getting shafted shouldn't be such a shock to your system anymore. Ban ICE. Because Homeland Security was so weapons of mass destruction years. The Knicks had no choice but to let KP go. You always have a choice. Liam Neeson's choice and what black directors to work with in the future? Not so much. Kate Spade wins the award for most passive-aggressive suicide note ever. It read, "It's not your fault. Dad will explain." Dad screams, "Explain what? I was the one who was more impossible to live with? What a bag of shit, Kate!" Shadow banning is realer than Keith Ellison's "Borders are bullshit" t-shirts. Facebook is the loving surrogate father of Obama who hasn't bailed on him yet. LeBron got the idea to sport a cast after Michelle threatened to break her arm in Obama's ass if he ever offered lemonade to Beyonce over her homemade kombucha again. Jeffrey Tambor blasting his transparent co-star for pissing on the toilet seat in his trailer. Real ladylike. Now, get out of my trailer, you butchy bitch. Hey now. Charlie Rose being harassed for an autograph on the street. Does your mom want a dick pic or not?